Wow. I just interviewed Kim Rogers, the Worm Queen. What an amazing episode. You are going to want to watch this to the end. She shared some tips on how to avoid worms and parasites, and then if you do have them, how to detect them, and then how to treat them. Parasites, worms, much more common than people realize. You are going to want to watch this episode. Trust me. This has been Dr. Josh with Alzheimer's Breakthrough. Peace and plants. Kim Rogers, the Parasite Queen, is a seasoned wellness professional with over 20 years of experience in Western medicine. Kim has dedicated her career to advancing medical knowledge and improving patient care, especially now around parasites. Through her extensive tenure in the medical field, she has authored numerous medical publications, contributed to national allied health certification tests, and provided valuable insights as a member of medical advisory boards. Kim's journey in the medical field took an unexpected turn when her own health challenges led her on a transformative path. Struggling with endometriosis, parasites, Lyme disease, and mold poisoning, she embarked on a personal quest to stop taking pharmaceuticals and strive for a more holistic and natural approach. Inspired by her own healing journey, Kim co-founded and is the CEO of Rogers Hood Apothecary in December of 2021 and invented the globally known, best-selling, and viral Parasite Parasite Cleanse Kit. The kit consists of high-quality handmade herbal tinctures aimed at detoxing unwanted parasites, worms, candida, heavy metals, and toxins, while also promoting self-being. Rogers Hood gained widespread recognition after Kim's personal results with parasites went viral on TikTok and Instagram, gaining millions of views and hundreds of thousands of followers, crowning her the Worm Queen. With a commitment to transparency and quality, Kim's products have resonated with a diverse audience seeking natural solutions for various health concerns. Driven by her purpose and passion, Kim, armed with knowledge, dedicates her life to helping others self-heal and to become their own patient advocates in their lives and health. By sharing her experience and expertise on social media and her own health and wellness podcast, What's Eating You, she is clearly on an unstoppable mission to help the world heal. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's Dr. Josh with Alzheimer's Breakthrough. And could hidden parasites be sabotaging your brain, your energy, and even accelerating dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or something else? Today, we're tackling one of the most overlooked drivers of brain fog, inflammation, and cognitive decline. Our guest is Kim Rogers, a seasoned wellness professional with more than 20 years in Western medicine. Kim's personal story and her own parasite results went viral on TikTok and Instagram, gaining millions of views and hundreds of thousands of followers who crowned her the Worm Queen. Kim, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to meet you and to have you here.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So where to start? How about with the obvious? This is an Alzheimer's podcast.
Yeah.
How often do you see parasites affecting people's thinking, whether it's brain fog, Alzheimer's, or other brain problems?
A lot. And I actually come from neurology. So I ran 25 healthcare colleges. I have 2 healthcare degrees. I worked in the field since 2004, and I was a medical specialist. And my specialty was neurology and endocrinology. So it's kind of a crazy alignment with the way that I went viral over something that I literally can talk about, that I literally can look back and go, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes total sense with me personally and professionally. Because now I'm looking back and I'm like, so I had mold and I had parasites and I have Lyme, and I was slowly mentally degrading, right? Like I was just going down the tubes, and it was really a sad thing. So I really feel like when you get these environmental toxins out of your body, that you are able to have a more fruitful life and feel better, you know?
And I actually worked in a Lyme mold parasite clinic for many, many years. And so I've seen literally
Yeah.
thousands of patients describing what you went through. But the cool thing is you figured it out. Did you figure it out for yourself first? Or what was the order?
Yeah. So in 2019, my husband and I quit our lives. We sold our home, every belonging we had, but a few things. And we moved out to our recreational property in the rainforest, and we started to build our own log home. And we did that because my health declined so rapidly that I did not want to leave my husband with a lot of bills, and we really just wanted to see if we could heal me. So when we got out there, it was like a good year and a half that I was getting off my medications just to see if some of the side effects that I was having, my doctors wanted to give me a label of Parkinson's because I was on Klonopin, which those are some side effects.
Sure.
And so, and I didn't know this, but I was living in mold, and I didn't know how mold is really like dementia, right? And Alzheimer's 3. And so there's kind of like these things that were going on that I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I finally just started to dig even deeper. And I came across a gal's video on TikTok that said she almost unalived herself over worms because they can affect your mental health. And I just stopped and I was like, what? Seriously? And I bought what she was talking about. And within 3 days, I saw flukes, roundworm, and pinworms in the toilet.
Wow. So it sounds like your direction to health was a chance encounter. Was it a video on social media or
Mhm. Yeah, it was a video on social media that she goes, "I can't even believe I almost unalived myself over worms. Who would have thought that they, in fact, affect your mental health?" So then I did it, and then I did a video a couple of days later, and I said, I come from Western medicine. I've been in it for over 18 years, and I've never dewormed myself until now. And it just stopped everyone. Within 2 hours, a million people saw that video, and I knew, I was like, is this one something I can keep talking about, right? Because I've seen people go viral and then they can't keep discussing what they went viral over, and I thought, I can really talk about this. I can get more information as well because that what TikTok was just starting to boom, and people were in the comments telling me all their parasite stuff, and I'm like, this is a thing. I should really look into this. I thought I had worms a couple of years before, and my doctors told me there's no way. We're in a first world country. You haven't been anywhere where pinworms or roundworm would be. Well, in fact, I was. My water is contaminated where we built our log home.
wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Mhm.
Wow. So it sounds like you were able to get some great information on social media, but what were other tools or how I mean, obviously you had the background in more traditional Western neurology approach, but I would argue that in some ways that could actually be hindering you. But but were you able to integrate some of the traditional stuff or how did that actually work?
Well, pharmacology is my favorite. I love medicine. So it's really just switching my brain over from, okay, well, you take this pill for this symptom. Now it's you take this herb for these ailments. This frequency is going to help with this ailment. So it was just a quick switch, and I had already kind of been in the switching of the Western medicine world to more holistic for myself because I started doing mushrooms, and I started to use lion's mane, which I do really remember us using lion's mane in the field, in the medical field, to help with people that had dementia. And so I was getting off Klonopin, which is a mental health pill, and I was trying to supplement the herbs for it. And so I already was starting to be in this world and just kind of flip the script. It's still the same body, it's still the same philosophy. And I I love learning about the human body. So it was just a matter of now I need to put my training in, but use different words from what I've done before. But I did work a lot with lion's mane and turkey tail when I was in the field. And those are my two like go to for my mental health when I was switching everything out of the synthetics to the herbs. So it really wasn't too difficult for me, but it was something that I really had to sit down and I opened up my books and I studied herbs. And when I did the cleanse, I immediately saw what was in it: wormwood and clove and garlic. And I thought, okay, well, what do each one of these do for an ailment? Like, what made the worms come out of my body? And I also had stage 4 endometriosis and beginning stages of cervical cancer. And I did a surgery for a hysterectomy when I was 29, and I had 13 surgeries from the time that I was diagnosed with endo to the time that I was 2019. So I really have been in the system on both levels.
Wow. So, and it sounds like fortunately you had your husband who was supportive, because I've run into so many patients where many of their friends and family will not be supportive. They're like, "Well, you're just crazy, just snap out of it," and they can't. And so it's cool that you had a supportive environment too.
And Dr. Josh, that's why I'm doing this,
Okay.
because I know that chronically ill people and people that are going through health challenges, they're alone. They don't have a lot of answers. They don't have a lot of people to turn to. And so I actually said out loud to the universe, if this continues to go on, I want to make a community where people feel safe and understood, and I can give as much information to them as possible. It's why I said at the beginning of this that I haven't had a vacation in 4 years,
Right.
because I literally have done this every day since July 18th of 2021.
Oh,
I
wow.
created a business because of this. I started Rogers Hood at the end of December of 2021. So I literally have done this every single day. I have either worked on my company because we have a 10,000 square foot manufacturing facility that we make our own product, or I've done podcasts, or I do content. So I really haven't had a day, because it's so important, one, to make everyone feel safe and well and understood. And because really it is kind of fun to teach people about their bodies. I'm
Yeah.
a professor at heart. So
And it's amazing, and it's such good news that you're finally will have the time to take a real vacation. Although in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I bet she's going to record a little bit of content on, right?
my intention will be
Okay.
content for funsies.
Okay. Wow. So you mentioned lion's mane. Just as an example, what dose or what form of lion's mane were you taking that helped you?
5 grams a day is a therapeutic dose. Anything below that is a supplemental dose. So I took turkey tail, which breaks down scar tissue and tumors. And I also took lion's mane with it. I took reishi and some chaga. I did maitake, which helps regulate your blood sugar. I really dove deep into the mushroom world because there's so many great benefits. And we do have multiple mushroom tinctures that are functional, that we actually do and double extract ourselves and make the tincture ourselves. And so I dove into that. So it wasn't really complicated when I realized that herbs and mushrooms are all the same when I did create the Parasite kit and then all my other kits.
Nice. So one of the things that's going back in my mind, kind of warning bells, because I mean, I've treated patients like you with Parkinson's or other symptoms, and I, just as a confession, I was too aggressive with one of the patients killing parasites, and their Parkinson's got worse. They could no longer walk. I put them in a wheelchair. The good news is I was able to take them out of it. But after that experience, I normally go low and slow. I would not, for example, start someone on 5 grams of the lion's mane. What are your thoughts on how aggressive to be initially?
Well, lion's mane can be eaten though. Like it can be eaten in a cooked form. So, and then you wouldn't really know how many grams that is. It's just kind of like a good level of understanding of how many that they can take, but it doesn't, it's just to protect the brain. So I mean, I took it with amanita, which is another mushroom that's really not well known, that actually helps with lion's mane, and it helps take you out of PTSD. So it puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system. And I actually learned how to break that down and make it into ibotenic acid
Oh,
and
wow.
muscimol, because it's all over here in Washington, and they actually have, it's the same DNA structure as Klonopin, which is what I was getting off of. They actually changed one molecule of that medication to be able to synthesize it, to be able to sell it to the public. But Amanita is the same DNA structure as Klonopin. So I learned all of these things. And then that's when I brought in the lion's mane, because the lion's mane helps drive it through the blood brain barrier and helps actually heal the brain. So you can go lower than 5 grams a day, but I did that because that was a therapeutic dose that I knew, as I was weaning off of my Klonopin, that I could step onto the lion's mane. That's why I did that. But now I add it into like our lymphatic kit to help support. And people that do struggle on parasite cleanses, I do know what that looks like because of my own parasite cleanse. And that's really what made me push to make my own product, because there's no directions anywhere in life. We have them. There's no binder that you should be told to take, which a lot of people don't do that. And you need to actually like support your body while you're doing killing. And I think a lot of people go into a killing phase and they don't always know all of the supporting phases that you need to stay in while you're doing the killing phase. And so that's what made me really dive deep and create a company over this while I was still very ill. I mean, just because I went viral, I was still pretty sick. And so I really wanted to be able to, one, to make something for myself. And while I was doing all of the cleansing, I realized that viruses are dropped, bacteria is dropped out of parasites, heavy metals. And so that's what made me bring in things like usnea, which is Mother Nature's doxycycline. So it helps pull out bacteria and viruses that they're holding on to. You go in and you do something like Oregon grapefruit. Yes, it's a great anti-parasitic, but it also helps expose them by reducing inflammation where they're living in that mucus. I brought in things like lungwort lichen that helps break the biofilm down, because that's what they're encoded in. So I think that there's a lot of great cleanses out on the market, but you also have to support your liver. And so they're not always bringing in dandelion root or burdock root. So you really think of it in like supporting and killing at the same time, and binding to remove it all. It's so many working parts. It's so many. But if you have something like a tincture that you can give someone and they can adjust it, so maybe instead of 15 drops, they do 5, instead of 3 times a day, they do 2, they're still getting the herbs in their body, but they're also being allowed to adjust it themselves versus just taking a pill. And I think that the pills don't always break down in the body the same way that a tincture absorbs immediately into your mouth and immediately into your bloodstream. And so it really is something that I like researched and looked at before I just dropped it and was like, hey, I'm here. I'm making cleanses, you know, because it's important. It's really important to know that you're not going at it full bore and hurting yourself in the process.
Kim, I think that's a great point because I found the same thing, and I think it's actually mold. Mold will sit in the gut, preventing absorption. So you could take pills with lots of really good stuff, but if your gut doesn't absorb it, whereas you're exactly right, a tincture that can be absorbed in the mouth where there isn't mold blocking it, you're going to see much better results.
We have a mold cleanse as well, because I had mold poisoning. And so I went through all the parasites. I did the viral. I went and started a business, and then I took a break from doing parasite cleansing just for a few days, and my eyes started to swell shut. Well, now I know that wormwood suppresses mold in your body, so it was just suppressing me and not making the spores go, crazy. So then I actually stopped. My eyes swelled shut. I lost half my hair. My hair is, after a few years, growing back. It's really great. But I realized how hard it was when I found out that I had mold poisoning to find a good mold cleanse. And all of the herbs that you need to take when you're doing a mold cleanse to support your body and also help keep sweeping those parasites out. I also figured out that you should do parasite cleansing before you do a mold cleanse because they can hold 6 to 8 times their weight in spores. So you're going in and you're trying to remove all these spores from your body, but they're being held tight in a house of biofilm with the worms. So there was so many learning lessons that happened to me while I was going through my own health journey. And so when I figured out with my doctor's help on this one how I had mold, where it came from, and we moved ourselves out of the mold, um, there it was so difficult to find a good cleanse. It was so difficult to be able to brain fog it so much that I was trying to figure out how to do what they were all telling me, pills and tinctures, and this, it was just so much work and I couldn't do it. And it was tough. So I just created another mold cleanse because I use those herbs a lot and it's just so much easier when you have something in a kit.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned frequency. You were using
Mhm.
frequencies. How could, could you share how you were using frequencies?
So I use frequencies still to this day. I use them every single day. I use them in a couple of different ways. I listen to frequencies at night that have subliminal messages to help rewire my brain to keep me calm and confident and to be able to have good speaking and just love myself. And when I went through kind of a mini stroke while I was getting off of my Klonopin, I used frequencies to help calm my brain and rewire my nervous system. And I have like a frequency chair that I sit on and it vibrates the frequency. I'll I've got like a Healy, I have a cheek oil. I'm getting this really awesome laser frequency that helps your your vagus nerve, help kind of calm it down. So I feel like frequencies are just something that people don't realize how important it is to understand them. So when I first got into this world that I'm in now, coming from very strict Western medicine, I just did not realize that everything is a frequency. And I use the analogy that when you're at an opera and the singer can bring her voice to the same level as a glass and it shatters, it's because she was able to shatter the glass with a frequency that matches that glass. And when I realized that in the middle of deworming myself, I used that when I started creating my kits. I realized that wormwood can go in as a frequency and shatter the ailment of a parasite. And so that's all that they do here, right? And so it really was helpful for me to understand where we can target, what heavy metals need to go with cilantro, how we need to support this by using this frequency herb, and just really bring it all together. And even if the person who's taking it doesn't understand it, at least they have a better idea of everything that's going on.
That's awesome. Now, there are going to be some people listening who are skeptical and say, like, well, that's cool for you, Kim. You had parasites, but I don't have parasites.
Sure.
How can people know how? But you mentioned you were exposed to parasites in the water. How do people get exposed to parasites?
Well, I wasn't just from the water, but that's the one place that I know for a fact that I caught them because I tested my water and that matched the same parasite I had in my stool. And I also have tested water around this country and found out that we just don't test our water for nematodes. We'll test them for parasites, which are protozoas and they're microscopic, but we just don't test our water for actual physical worms. You can get them from salmon, and I pick on salmon, and I was thinking about this last night. Why do I pick on salmon all the time? And it's because it's pink and you can see the worms. Most other fish are white and you can't see the worms in the fish. So we pick on salmon because you can see them because they're white worms on front of, a
On the
pink
pink, yes.
background. 'Cause I'm like, why am I always picking on? Because all fish actually do have parasites in them.
Sure.
It's closer to the belly when you cut the fish and eat that piece of meat. If it's closer to the belly, it's going to have more parasites than further up. But I live here and I've gone down to those fishermen down at the wharf and I'm like, hey, so what fish do you think don't have worms? They're like, all fish have worms, Kim. All fish have worms. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
So you can catch them from eating seafood. If you have pets, that's a big one because your pets need to be dewormed. You deworm them. We should be deworming ourselves. I also know you can get them from water. You can get them from undercooked pork, beef, and raw produce. It's just, they're really out here. We've just never really sat down and studied them to the extent at Western medicine. I mean, you've been to college and medical school, and this is not a subject that was ever approached really, but for a few hours.
That's true. Like maybe one or two classes, but it was actually I had I went to Harvard Med School, and at the time they had medical students. They gave in the third year they gave us a tough case to present to a big conference at Mass General Hospital. It would end up getting published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was a big deal. It turned out that my case, it turned out to be parasites in the brain. So neurocysticercosis. So
Yep.
it's taught, but it was just like it was a fluke that it happened to me.
Do you know JRFK Jr. has that? And I'm pretty sure it was his uncle Ted that also had it. And it was from eating undercooked pork, and it ate part of his brain. And he talked about it last year while he was on the campaign. It's just, people don't realize everyone I've talked to has had some sort of an experience with a parasite.
Right. Right.
It really is more common than what we all think it is.
Another common source are tick bites or mosquito bites, insect bites. Small parasites can be transmitted that way too.
It's just such a weird subject that we should be talking more about, that Western medicine over the last 101 years has just changed. And I feel really fortunate that I'm able to kind of navigate why that change happened, because I used to write medical books and I used to work in that world. And so, and why don't labs know? And I, again, worked in that world training people. And I just feel like this is such a miss in our society, where other societies, other medical styles, they really think, this is an issue. Let's allow our citizens to go to the pharmacy and pick up a inexpensive antiparasitic and allow them to make that decision on their own. And so for me, it's kind of a strange concept that we don't have that type of freedom here. And it's very expensive, by the way, here. So I periodically will do synthetics because we were so infested. So just to make sure that I'm always keeping myself as healthy as possible, I will do rounds here and there of like albendazole, and it's so expensive. It was $24,000 for 28 days through one of my insurances for one of me, just me. And my husband was $24,000 as well. Then we went on a cruise to go get antiparasitics in another country, and it was $45 for a year's supply. It's crazy. And it's not like if you take an antiparasitic, it's going to do any harm to you, and other countries realize that. So with all of that said, that's why I've done what I've done. That's why I've created a kit that anybody can get, that anybody can go and buy themselves at $100. Because when this started, 6 pills were $1,000. 6 pills. I don't have that kind of money. 6 pills. It's so expensive. If you don't test positive through a Western medicine lab like LabCorp, which I did not, but I tested positive through a Mexico lab where my stool got sent, same with my husband, they won't pay for it. And so it's really kind of a miss. And I say that all the time because it really is a miss for us to think that we can't get these things. And when I go all the way back to when I first was diagnosed with endometriosis, I have chronic Lyme. I've had chronic Lyme for 30 years. I found out I have chronic Lyme in 2023. So all of my health issues have been mainly because of Lyme, but I was never tested. I have mold in my body, and I have the same mold as my mom. My mom said I was born into mold, and we've just figured that out this last year. So looking back, did I really need a hysterectomy? Did I really need to go through 13 surgeries? Or could I have just done a really good cleanse, added some synthetics up in there, or at least had the option to be tested for mold, parasites, and Lyme? And so, looking at this big picture, I just want to make it as readily available to people to have them have an understanding. One, it's not necessarily going to hurt you. It's really going to help with inflammation, get, rid of some heavy metals. You might see some worms. We're not that hard of a cleanse. We're pretty gentle, in my opinion. I've done some rough cleanses, so I really didn't want to do that. And so it's like looking at it in this big picture of the way Western medicine is. This is such a small thing, but it really is a big thing too.
It's huge. And let me ask you this, because in my experience in this clinic, seeing it seemed like for most of the patients, it wasn't just parasites, it wasn't just mold, it wasn't just Lyme disease, it wasn't just industrial toxins. It was all of them together. Kind of like your case. Why do you think that is? Why do people have a dozen different things, and why can't it be simple?
I know. I get it. I don't know why it can't be simple.
All right.
One of my doctors said, Kim, you were the hardest case. So much so that my husband and I understood that when I left my life and his life in 2019, that I was dying and I was not well. I don't know if you've seen my before and after picture, but I was, let me show you guys, because it's pretty shocking. And, I think when I talk about it, one of my best friend always says to me, you say it in such a nonchalant way. And I'm like, right, because I've had 4 years to do talk therapy about it. But that is how sick I
Oh,
was.
wow. That's
But this
crazy.
is what I looked like years before. This is me now, but I was a snowboarder. I ate healthy. I was really conscientious about, and it just took me living in mold, remodeling a moldy house, and then being exposed to parasites when we moved into our recreational property, being bit by a tick, having heavy metal overload, having multiple surgeries, 13 of them, just all of it compounded to this body. And I want people to realize that this is the only one you get. And if there's ways that we can clean some of this overload of toxins, right? We're all so overloaded, and there really isn't a way right now for us to get away from it. But we can be proactive and cleanse it out as much as we can so that we have that option of not getting that sick again. And I think once people get that feeling of, oh my God, this is what it's supposed to feel like to feel good, they get obsessed with it like I am.
Wow. So it also sounds like if you hadn't found that video 5 years ago, you might still have that label Parkinson's, and we would not be doing an easy interview like we are today.
Correct. Correct. I just was not, I was 40. I'm 47 in a week. I don't want another label. I had been labeled fibromyalgia, endometriosis, adenomyosis, IBS, IBD. I just didn't want any more labels. And I didn't want to go through an MRI to find out that there's nothing they could do for me either. Like in either way I looked at it, I wouldn't win. And the only way I could see me getting out of it was getting off of all of my medications, figuring out exactly what is wrong with me. Because when I started researching the Klonopin, it can cause you to have Parkinson's-like symptoms. But none of my doctors, none of my surgical team even looked at that possibility. And so I just thought, I got to do this myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So as an addition to that, Klonopin chronic usage has
hmm
also been associated with dementia.
hmm
When I have patients on it, or that class of drugs, I will try to wean them off it. I won't tell them to stop immediately, because if you stop immediately, you can have seizures and other
Yep.
problems. But it sounds like you figured out a way to wean yourself off of that, which is great.
I mean, I did do it a little too fast in January of 21. I was about 4 months in, and I did have a little bit of issues that was because I'm like, I just got to be done with it. You're at that last little bit, and You don't know which way to go. So I did make a few mistakes, but it just kind of helped me understand my body even more. And again, I was very lucky that my husband was with me because he's very smart. He's not from medicine, but he's just a really smart man. He's an herbalist, so he understands all of this as well. So really was just the way that the cards were supposed to align.
Wow. So your husband's an herbalist, obviously can help with developing a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
this.
we got to work on it together. It's been really kind of a fun. And then the other half of Roger's Hood is one of my friends that I actually met on TikTok when all of this was happening. And she volunteered to build me a website because back, 4 years ago, they did not have Linktree.
Right. Right.
That really is something that's new. You had to
Yeah.
have a website when you would talk. And so she started to build me a website. And I said, why don't we just try and do our own like product? I'm sitting here talking about all these other people's products and they're expensive and I can do this. And I said, but I don't have the space. I'm in a travel trailer building a log home, still very ill. And I said, but you have a little space, so let's do this. And so that's how it all kind of started.
Wow. So if we can go back for a second, you
Mhm.
mentioned testing for parasites, and at least if you want insurance to cover some of these anti-parasites, I think you were mentioning stool tests, but what type of tests are available to test for parasites?
There's a few things that you guys can do out there. One of them is through parasites.org. It's a stool test. It's an independent lab. They'll test in Arizona and also in Mexico. There's a parasitologist that looks at it all day. So it's not just a lab technician. It's actually like someone that stepped in and this is all they do all day long at a lab. And then they also test water and they test for H. pylori. You can go to Vibrant, you can go to a GI map. There's quite a few places you can go. You can look for a live blood culture analysis. That's another option that people can do that's pretty inexpensive. You can get your blood drawn during the full moon and your doctor can look at like your EOS levels to see exactly is it heightened, if it is why, and then, do like a stool with that. You can get your water tested. Everything that I do and talk about is in my link tree so that people can self heal and they can go in there and figure out what they need to do and where they need to get started. But usually it's a stool test is the best way that they think that you can find out you have a parasite. I had Cryptosporidium parvium and I had that for a while and that's what was starting to make my organs shut down because it'll make your kidneys start to slowly shut themselves down. And so I had that, I had roundworm, I had pinworms, and I had flukes, I had Lyme, and I had mold. And I have heavy metals. I had mercury seeping into my mouth from my root canal. I mean, it just really was. I'm a typical American though. I mean, that's what's really sad about all of this. People that are listening because they really are struggling and they want this knowledge and this education and they want the understanding of, well, maybe I can try this. And the thing is that if you don't see worms, but you start to feel better, this is something that you should integrate into your life 3 to 4 times a year minimum. If you're starting to feel good, inflammation's going down, you're starting to feel like yourself again, it's not going to hurt you. It's really going to just help boost you up, start soaking your produce, making you understand and feel better about your life.
Wow. So, and I think it's important to underscore that sure there are tests available. You can look for eosinophils in the blood. You could look for parasites in the blood and the stool. Um, but you can miss it. I mean, parasites, they're just trying to survive. They will go anywhere in your body if they can find a place. And they can hide in biofilm, they can
Mm-hmm.
hide in the brain. And we're not normally doing brain biopsies to look for these things. So
No.
if the testing is positive, it's helpful. But as you implied, you can still have negative tests, but you can still have rip roaring parasites in your body. You just the traditional tests we have, unfortunately, can't detect them sometimes.
And to add on to that, I actually sent the same stool to LabCorp as I did to parasites.org, and LabCorp missed it. They missed it entirely. And when I look at their paper, it says, negative, but this is not in lieu of a parasitic infection. That's their out. And I believe we need Western medicine. So I believe we need it, but I also believe they're not here to heal you. They're here to save your life and to get down to the bottom of it. But you have to be proactive on your other side of things too and understand your body better, because you don't need to have a test to do a parasite cleanse. And in fact, like you just said, you may never see a parasite. You may never test positive, but have all of the symptoms like grinding your teeth, IBD, staying up all night, craving sugar. They are nocturnal creatures. So at 7 p.m., that's their morning. And you're like ready to go to bed and not eat anything. And they're like, oh no, we're partying. And then you get all these other environmental toxins in your body as well. And they're all just living rent free in your body. Well, just do some flushing out, like do some red light, do some IVs, get yourself boosted. Like there's so many things that you can do to help your body as an independent person, that you don't necessarily need your doctor to sit there and say, this is what you have to do with yourself. And that's the part that, being your own advocate and understanding your body, it really is your responsibility in a sense to know your own body. We've just not been taught, which is kind of a sad thing.
Right. We've been taught to rely on our physicians or medical system. And, if it's an acute injury, something that can easily be fixed, that's fine. But if it's a chronic condition like you and many other people have and had, you're right. You have to take personal responsibility for it. Let me ask you this. What are you mentioned tinctures can help with parasites. You mentioned binders. Do you ever use glutathione for yourself or, yeah?
Love glutathione. I usually have a glutathione patch, or I'll take it in a liposomal. I always get it in my IVs. I make sure that not only am I doing the parasite cleansing and keeping my body clean, but I'm also nourishing it. And I love IVs. I feel like because I have such pill fatigue. I mean, I was on 26 medications at one point and it's exhausting. And that's really why I pivoted over to tinctures, because I don't want people to have to take more pills and have it fight with your stomach. And I mean, there's so many cons when it comes to a pill than there are more pros with tinctures. But I feel like since I don't necessarily take as many pills now and I do a lot of my stuff in IV form, I save money because I can get all of my stuff every 2 weeks for like $200, $250 just by finding someone like Modwella. They'll come to you and give you an IV, and I'm just sitting there in my IV and I feel better for the rest of the week, sometimes to the following week. And then I do another one a couple of weeks later and it's economically better for me because I'm not, oh, how much of this am I actually getting as well? When you have a parasite, they can steal up to 90% of your nutrients. So how much of it is really getting into your body if you're taking all of it and they're absorbing it?
Right. And I've seen reports from 100 years ago that they used to use sanitized tapeworms for weight loss.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and and
The
and, and, and,
Victorian age.
and I'm sure it worked, but unfortunately, then the tapeworms take over. And yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you see? I've done videos on it where I have them behind me and there's a big sign from like 1924 that says, eat, 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 get your sanitized tapeworm, never be fat again. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like pointing at it going, eat, eat, eat. Are you kidding me? That's gross. That is gross.
It's very gross. But let's also, just taking a step back, you mentioned that all these different fish, not just salmon, but all the fish have worms. But historically, if we go back thousands of years ago, I think humans also had parasites. It's not. I mean, we could pretend that the people in the United States today don't have it, but we do, and it's. I think it's a normal part of stimulating our immune system.
I think that we shouldn't have them. I know some people think that we should. There's like a 50-50 in the parasite community. Some people believe you should have them to assist with absorbing heavy metals. And I'm not one of the people that believe you should have them. I believe that you can eradicate them from your body, but they cause a lot of the disease that we are seeing in the autoimmune. I don't think that's the only thing. But I do believe they're a huge contribution to it. And I don't think that we need to have them in our bodies to keep the microbiome balanced or what the immune system balanced. I think that what they can come in and do is they wreak havoc because they hijack our nervous system and they hijack our lymphatic system, causing us to have mental health issues and causing us to stay into fight or flight versus allowing us to go into rest or digest. They're another living thing inside of our body that our body then has to try and fight against or fight with, right? Because they're in there and they're absorbing nutrients. They're just living there without needing to do anything. But I do believe they've been around a lot longer than us, obviously, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They're going to be around a lot longer than us. It's just up to us to figure out how, while we're here in the present, how to keep our bodies with our immune systems up so that if we do happen to eat them, which it's not, I mean, it's very common, if we do happen to eat them, that they don't want to stay in our bodies because we're inhospitable. And so if you take something like the Parasite kit prior to eating questionably, they're not going to want to stay in. It's also why a lot of countries use things like pumpkin seed on their salads and on their food because pumpkin seed is an anti-parasitic. And while you're taking that anti-parasitic food, it's going in your stomach and it's swishing around inside. And they're like, oh, yeah, we don't want to be in here. And it makes them leave. So they're not being absorbed and causing havoc later on. You could go years and never have any problems. And you have the most stressful situation of your life. And that is what they feed off of. So all of a sudden you're exposed to the mold like I was. And I had one of the most stressful years of my entire life in 2016. And that is when I started to decline. And it's because I disrupted them, but I made them happy with that disruption. And then they started going in and taking over. But if I had known, I would have continued to take something to keep them suppressed and removed. But I feel like over the last 101 years, our environment's just gotten to be so toxic that this might not have even been a conversation 200 years ago that fish would be this contaminated. But now they're swimming or being farmed. And unfortunately, it's not a good environment anymore. And because they hold on to heavy metals, it's just weighting them down in your body. And we're so exposed to heavy metals. So it's really a series of events that I feel like especially over the last 10 years, I feel like we've gotten a lot more toxic.
And that's what I've seen looking at my patients' results of their toxin panels. I'm seeing much higher levels of not just heavy metals, but of plastics and forever chemicals and petroleum byproducts. And, and, and our ancestors, as you mentioned, hundreds of years ago, didn't have to face that.
Yeah, we're just kind of a toxic society right now. And so the best way for us to handle it is to be proactive and to do the little things like cleansing and red light and HBOT and vibration. They sound like, oh, what do you mean? But if you just did it a little bit here and there throughout your week, you are going to add so much more to your life and you're going to feel so much better, which then gives you more energy and makes you more present to add more to your life. And I really come from the thought process of I'm not going to make it. And now I strive every morning. I wake up and I do what I need to do to make myself feel better during the day in order for me to be able to keep doing this. And that's the way you got to think about your life. It is worth going through a little bit of discomfort for a month while you're on a parasite cleanse in order for you to understand yourself a little bit more. It really does allow you to reconnect your soul to your body. It's the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. I definitely feel like I have more trust in myself. And I feel like that's something that as a chronically ill person that you lose because you lose that independence. And I'm one to say, I don't drive because I don't feel independent enough after 2021, where I had a mini stroke, to continue to drive. I don't feel like I'm ready to do that. And it's been 4 years. That is such a loss of independence for a human being to feel that way. And so when you can take these few things into your own hands and allow yourself to make the decision to heal parts of your body, it's so empowering. It's so empowering to be able to go, you know what? I'm going to take this and I'm going to then feel better in 30 days where I can soak my produce. I can start going and buying more organic food. I can go to the grocery store. Those things we as healthy people don't realize what that feels like as someone who is a chronically ill person. And I do understand that because I declined so fast.
Wow. And you mentioned soaking produce. What do you recommend soaking produce in?
I love talking about this part. This is my
Awesome.
favorite because it's such an easy thing to do. I recommend everyone soaking produce. I don't eat raw produce when I'm out and about, whether it's in my own country or it's outside of this country. It's a very easy way to catch a parasite. You don't know how they cleaned their produce and you don't know what water they use. I also don't drink tap water and ice because they're all made from mold or parasites are in them, heavy metals. So I'm very much against drinking any tap water out and about. But my soaking recipe, if you guys want to grab a pen and paper, I will go over it. I use 2 cups of white vinegar, a half of a lime, and 2 tablespoons of Baja sea salt because it has additional minerals in it. So it's a kind of a biohack that I do so that they get remineralized back into my produce. I use distilled or filtered water, 1 gallon. I let my produce soak for 5 to 10 minutes. I rinse it off and then I put it in another distilled or filtered water bath. And I use a machine called Thurasage Bubbler. It's an ozone machine. So I do 2 stages to clean my produce. My produce is to give me nutrients and to make me feel better. And unfortunately, there are a lot of parasites in and on raw produce. It's people that get into my comments and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a vegetarian." I'm like, "You probably have more parasites than people that eat meat."
Right. But they may be different types of parasites, but they're still parasites.
Exactly. It's still in the parasite world. And, the definition of a parasite is anything that feeds off a host, but the Latin definition is an unwanted dinner guest.
Yeah, or I study Latin. Para means by the side, and site is sitting by. So yeah, it's a companion. it's
Dr. Josh, why do you think this is something that is so taboo in our Western medicine world? Because you've come from this as well.
I think for several reasons. One reason is if you look at, I hate to say it, what treatments can we offer? Sure, we have a few oral pills we can give for parasites. We have a few IVs. We don't have a ton of different therapeutic interventions. So that's number one. Number two is we don't have great testing. Yes, I can order a stool test, I can order a blood test, but most of the time it comes back negative, even though parasites are still there hiding in biofilm, this biologic film throughout the body. And then number three is I think it's a I think it's a cultural taboo. When I studied in medical school parasites, it's like, oh, you only get this in third world countries. And the thing is like, oh, and the United States is not a third world country. Therefore, if you travel, then you have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it in this country. So I think it's a combination of those things, and it's one of those things you learn about these parasites to get through the boards in medical school, but when you get out in practice, unless you're doing infectious disease, most specialists are not looking, or generalists are not looking at this.
Yep, you're right. You're right. I think that with everything that I've learned and I'm doing, I actually just found a lobbyist that goes in front of the government, Congress, and wants to make changes. And from learning everything that I've learned, it is ridiculous that we don't have available, affordable, accurate testing where other countries do and we don't. It really is upsetting to me to think that 20 years ago, I could have gone and gotten 3 simple tests before I had a life altering surgery. That I have no children, I can't have children, and I'm 47 years old, and it's crazy how much damage your body goes through when you remove your uterus and your ovaries. Like it really is something that wasn't talked to me, and I was in the field. Like I worked with this doctor on a personal and professional level. did not sit down and be like, listen, in 20 years, when you're becoming the age of menopause, you're going to struggle. And so it's really kind of a sad sight that we don't have that option. And so it will be here at some time.
I
It
hope.
is
I
my
hope.
mission.
Yeah, because I mean, for testing, there's even technology. There's a device called the Firefly. There are others where you can actually use frequency, measure the frequencies of different parasites.
Yep.
But it's not FDA approved. It's not covered by insurance. But that's an example of where technology could take us if we let it.
I got my hair analysis done for fun because my podcast, What's Eating You, we go around and we tour and we go to different facilities and we get to show people the cool things that you can go and do. And I got my hair analysis done. It was only $250. And the first thing that came up was parasites and toxic metals.
Wow, and just to be clear, you don't treat your hair with metals or anything.
Nope,
No,
but
okay.
I know why it came up because I just gotten done doing a synthetic parasite cleanse. So the
Oh,
frequency of my hair showed that, and I was four days past being done with the synthetics. So it said it was 75% in my body. And when I pulled it, obviously the girl was alarmed. She's like, "Oh my God, Kim, what's going on?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, I just got done doing a pretty extensive synthetic drug, anti-parasitic, and it makes sense that my hair says that 75% of my body has heavy metals because that's pharmacy, and then also it has parasites because that's the frequency that those meds came in and told my body to rid. So there are so many ways that you can do these things. I really want to make some reform. It really is a mission of mine right now. I'm really fortunate that our company and that we're so busy and that I have the opportunity to do this. Because who better than the person that was crowned worm queen and talks about this all day?
and I guess there's only one worm queen, and that's you. It's not
Only
you're not
one.
going to have a contest or anything like that, right?
Well, there is one other girl. Her name is Alex Clark, and I was on her podcast a couple of months ago. And we were sitting there talking before the show, and she said, my community calls me Worm Queen. And I go, oh my God, I had no idea. I saw you did a story, and it's like Worm Queen's favorite things. And I looked at it, I'm like, that's not my favorite thing. She goes, yeah, because my community calls me that. I'm like, oh my God, two
Okay,
Worm Queens.
it's spreading. Okay, wow. So what excites you for the future? I know you're at the cutting edge of this. What are there any new and I know you're working with a lobbyist, but are there any new treatments, tests that you think might be available in like the next 6 months or a year?
I think people should look into the live blood culture test. I think that would be a good one for people that's just instant right there. I was talking with someone a couple of days ago on another podcast, and he said, I did 1 drop of blood, and all of a sudden you could see everything going on in that 1 drop of blood. So how much is going on in my body? And I said, exactly. So I think that I'm going to start working on that and see if I can find a place and do a podcast on that. I really want to make a better binder with Rogers Hood. So I'm working on some products, just really continuing to educate people and make this as mainstream as possible. It's kind of still pretty hidden. So I'm working really hard on making this be more vocal for people.
Yeah, and I applaud you for what you're doing, and let me know if there's anything I can do besides interview you to make that happen. Where can people find you online and in real life?
You can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, Mrs. Rogers Hood. That's MRSROGERSHOOD. On all of my profiles on Instagram, it's mrsrogers.hood. My website is rogershood.com. And you can watch me on my own podcast. We're starting season 2 in 8 days. No, 15 days. And it's What's Eating You with the letter U. And Dr. Josh, I definitely will be hitting you up to assist with some of the things that I know is coming in my future.
That is so exciting. And if people want to reach out to you directly, can they reach you by email or message on these sites? What's the easiest way?
All of them. You can find me on team@rogershood.com. That's our email. We answer every email, every DM, every comment. I have a team of 10 on social media and a team of 20 that helps make our products.
Kim, it was an absolute pleasure, not just to meet you, but to ask you some amazing questions and get some amazing answers. I really appreciate what you're doing to spread the word that parasites are real, they're common, and that if you treat them appropriately, you can prevent and reverse lots of diseases, including brain diseases.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was really great. I loved it.